clap.
Yeah, let's do a clap. And we'll just put it. Maybe here's fine. Actually, near you would be better.
Just point to me. Because this is 9 angle, probably.
We could actually just do this. There we go. Beautiful. And then we put it this way so it's not so.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. That's the thing to watch it on. Thank you for talking with us today.
Yeah. It's a pleasure.
Your name is Igor Vidor. Is that the way to pronounce it?
It's quite difficult to say. I mean, it's Vidor, but I don't think this pronunciation is easy. So
Vidor.
Vidor.
I've been saying Vidor.
But usually people say Igor Vidor, like
Igor Vidor.
Very strong.
That's quite a nice rhythm there.
Yeah.
So Igor Vidor.
Yes.
Okay. What I could do is just give a little bit of a background, just for the people that don't know anything about you, perhaps, because even though you're friends with the rancher who works at Weserhalle, for me you're still new, very new. I don't know you so well.
Yeah.
So perhaps I could ask you I could just say a few things that I know from reading, and then you could maybe elaborate on that, and we could go from there. For example, I know you were born roughly in 1985, somewhere in that year.
85.
85?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not 85.
No.
You were born in 85. You're not 85.
No, I'm not. Okay.
Sao Paulo, in Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
But because of certain circumstances, right now, you're living and working in Berlin.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could start off. We do have some questions that Arantxa has made, really beautiful questions. But maybe we could start off with how you describe yourself as an artist, just if you had to sort of say it in a statement, and how you ended up in this current situation in Berlin.
Yeah. The last years I'm very interested about notions of security in a more ontological context, more like big context, and how these notions of security are going on in Brazil, which is my country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is also one of the reasons which bring me here. Like after my last exhibition in 2018 in São Paulo, because I was living in Rio for more than almost 9 years or something like that. I started to receive these threats, like death threats, like by Instagram, people hacking my Instagram account, Sony account, Gmail, lots of things, like bots. But some of the threats was very serious, like death threats, saying things very specific about my work, and then the story is very long, but we figured out it was police who was threatening me.
Really? It was the police force?
Yeah.
The Brazilian police force
Yeah. Not this account, not the hacked account, but I don't know exactly who hacked the Instagram account or who was using the bots, but some emails I received was very serious, very specific, and after a while, trying to, track the ID, trace this and that, we figured out it was a police officer. And after a while, we figured out he was connections with the illegal paramilitary force in Brazil, what we call militia. And this is quite serious, because if I can tell you, the same group killed the Congress woman in Brazil, very famous Marielle Franco. And when we realized that, we are already in this movement helped by an institution here in Berlin, in Germany, called Martin Roth Initiative, who basically support artists in conditions of censorship or threats or death threats. And that after a lot of things, I came with my wife, because both of us was being threatened. And exactly. So that's what.
So that's how you came to be in Berlin right now. There's a group here called, what was their name?
The institution?
Yes.
Martin Roth.
Martin Roth.
Yeah, initiative. Yeah.
Marching hoods. So that you how did you become aware of these people? Did they reach out to you?
When I publicized my situation, a lawyer was helping me. Hey, it's better if once we know who is threatening you, we can make this statement on Instagram. And we don't know how much people are doing this, so at least they know you know about them. So it was a kind of strategy, like a counterattack, like saying, and I met the guy, like saying, I know what you're doing, so we have all this proof. So if something happened with me and my wife, we are publicizing this, like.
Do you have the material?
Yeah, like
exactly things like
this.
Okay.
But we could go like further, like charging him or something. But we realized if he wasn't alone, could be worse to me. Because if it was like this militia, I could be killed anywhere.
This could be the tip of the iceberg.
So what we did basically was just say, hey, don't mess with us because we have this proof. Mm-hmm. So if you stay quiet, we stay quiet. That's it. But things start to develop, and when the investigation about Maria de Franco raised up, and we figure out they planned that. Kill for more than 1 year, and I told my wife, hey, we have to move now because this is too quiet. I know this kind of person. I'm researching this a lot. So these illegal groups and it's quite dangerous. So we have to move. But at that moment, the institution here was already helping us through Goethe Institute, because I worked with them. So they knew what's going on. They introduced me to the institution, so we could apply and fill the whole bureaucracy to, move to Berlin.
So they not only helped you gather this information in case something did happen. So they had a legal case. They put you in touch with this institution.
Wow. Yeah, because the whole investigation behind to find who was threatening me was just by myself and a friend who works with IT or something like that.
Right.
Like to check the ID and things. And basically that.
So maybe this is a good. It's incredible to hear how you've ended up here, and not the most desirable way for a reason to come to a new place.
Berlin wasn't the plan.
Berlin wasn't the plan. I think that's most people's statement about Berlin. Berlin wasn't the plan. But maybe that we could go back a bit and talk about why your work would put you in a situation like that, because obviously the content is rubbing people up the wrong way, certain people up the wrong way. What is it about your work that could put you in a situation like that in Brazil? You've spoken about security, and symbols of this kind of nature. Perhaps you can just, for someone that hasn't seen your work, and we've linked to Igor's work on our Instagram, but beyond that, perhaps you could talk about why your work would have that impact. And we've got. This is some of the work. We're surrounded by your work.
Kind of. Yeah. This is for the solo show here in Britannia.
Right.
And also, this is the second time I do this kind of rope. I can explain after. But the security situation in Brazil. Public security is quite complex. But of course you heard about how Latin America is run by this violence, intermittent, without. And I was interested not just what in the red lines, of the newspapers, but how I could go deep. And this starts when I lost my 9th friend for being killed by police.
You lost 9 friends?
Yeah, I don't have many more friends from my childhood, and then I realized, was too much, to hold.
How? So you lost friends.
I grew in a very poor region in São Paulo.
Okay.
Yeah. So 90s was very dangerous, and I can say my friend was not saints, but they didn't they wasn't like thieves or drug dealers.
They didn't
when
behave. They didn't necessarily behave.
Yeah. So what's the path who take them to these conditions, and why police? So I grew thinking that police killing you if you're doing something like wrong, or if you're just walking on streets at night very late, this would be normal. So
to get punished for this.
Yeah,
very
like
normal. Well,
yeah,
non-criminal activity.
I mean, I justified that with my friends, and I thought, this. So I never could trust in police.
And this, so your idea of security is investigating this idea of police providing security, but actually it's not.
Yeah, I was deep in this. For example, we have 2 police in Brazil. One of them cannot investigate, and this is in our constitution. This makes our prison population being the 2nd biggest in the world. So there is lots of small facts that we don't put this in perspective in a sense to discuss what means security in Brazil. And we just accept that police is aggressive, or this dichotomy between evil and good. So I'm very interested, and there is other agents in this equation, like why, for example, German companies or European companies are still producing guns a lot and selling to my country or countries around Latin America once there is no armed conflict in Europe. So can you realize, for example, how the notion of democracy is contained in the territory? Or we could go further, like why companies in Germany again is selling like poison to the agriculture, and when you produce food with this poison, there is some laws in Germany they cannot buy. So the poison can go out but cannot go in. So
is this fertilizer? What kind of?
Yeah,
poison?
fertilizer. Yeah.
So poison as in like stuff.
It's forbidden to use here, but they sell to other countries. This is just one example, So
okay.
And part of my research, how, for example, companies like Heckler & Co are selling a lot of guns in sometimes in an illegal way to countries like Mexico or Brazil. So the first time I heard about Heckler & Co was in a rap song in '97 when I was 11, and it was the first time I heard about Adolf Hitler. So was in a rap song.
Wow.
And was about this company. And after that, for example, the guns who killed Marielle Franco, the congresswoman, was in the investigation was understand that was using the killers was using also Heckler & Koch guns. The biggest massacre inside a prison by police was using these guns. So there is what we call security in Brazil. Some of the guys I research and myself is like we call this business of protection, and this is a paradox, Because
it's not protection at all.
It's like when I need to sell, for example, these.
All good.
Sorry, I'm coming back. This is a bulletproof fabric, so this can stop again. It's okay? You want to close the...
Yeah, we can close the door.
Okay. So this is a bulletproof fabric. These 9 layers of that can stop again a bullet. Nice. And these are this is called aramid. So this kind of fiber is very strong.
9 layers.
9 layers.
9.
Yeah, like this.
It's a beautiful fabric.
It is. So this is, you can put in a vacuum machine. So this is used to create vests. So it's very light. Yeah. And the same company selling this here is selling to Brazil to armored cars. So if there is no stolen cars in Brazil, there is no customers, there is nothing. And for example, the brochure they used to publicize, to say for the other customers around the world how good is this. It's like, hey, Brazil are using this. São Paulo has 583 stolen cars a day, so you know we are improving our business, so you can put your money on stock on our company. So there is a huge network that provides, I mean, collaborate with these contests of violence over there, you know, and the language behind that's like, we are providing protection, we are providing security, but they never talk about terror. So, for example, right now I'm writing a script, doing a film with another artist here. She, Mamet Kaur, she's a rapper from India, and we are going to Oberndorf, where the Heckler & Koch company has the building, the biggest building. And this is a very Pacific city in the countryside, yeah. But you can imagine how they export terror and how this Pacific aspect is related with how terror they export for my country to kill people that I know, you know, like, so I'm very interested in this kind of static or aspect, or how this global trade can introduce you completely different way of lives, you know. So, and when you see the publicity language they use, it's always like, we are producing security and protection for you. Against who? You know?
So they're basically, in a simplified way, they rely on the chaos and the danger in countries like this to exist
in a very sophisticated way,
yeah,
as a language.
Yeah,
because for example, some years ago in 2015, Heckler & Koch was involved in a case in Mexico where 45 students disappeared after a protest against a mayor in a small city, and was constated they used Heckler & Koch guns. But the company has an agreement with the German government. They couldn't sell guns in place that is officially knowing that police forces like breaking human rights or this kind of. So what they did, they sold these guns to another country close to Mexico. So, and there is proof that 2 or 3 directors or employees went to Mexico to make workshops about the new guns, and was like 4,700 rifles.
And these guns are used in connection with these types of disappearances and things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
So
it makes sense then that your work and your investigations are unearthing things that a lot of people don't want to be. Yeah,
I never see names, you know, because I'm not interested in that. There is journalists that could do that. I'm not a martyr, you know. But I'm very interested to put this in another perspective different from the headlines of the newspapers. Much more, we need to go deep in the discussion to understand, for example, if I left, I don't know, my cell phone here, something tells me that you're not stealing that. Maybe? Okay.
No.
But something tells me that. And this is
yeah.
because I trust you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah? And I not even know you.
Yeah, I know.
But this means security. And maybe the paradox of security is more related with like confidence, trusting, you know, than protection. So if I don't trust you, and I think, he can take all things to me any moment, what I do? I put a fence here.
You need security, you need to
I put a camera here, I buy a lot of guns, but in the other side, we will think the same.
Yeah.
And you do the same.
Yeah,
and we create this black hole, you know, like this huge paradox instead of develop notions of security, you know.
Yeah, and trust and direct ways of conversating around this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful point, and I guess using art to hold a conversation about this is an interesting format, because news is so saturated with and so
anesthetized,
so full and has so many agendas and so to use art in a way that sparks a conversation about that is interesting. Moving on a little bit because we do have some questions.
It's a lot.
It's
just tell me.
It's really fascinating. Yeah, no, it's really good. In 2012, you moved to Rio de Janeiro to work in the educational program of a big contemporary art museum. Moving on. There's no real segue to that, really. Of a big contemporary art museum that was about to open its doors in the middle of a gentrification process. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about this experience?
It was very important because first of all, being involved in such a, how can I say that, project, because basically the project had this building destined to the exhibitions, like exhibition pavilion, we call it, and there is another building, same size, more money probably, for education. So they have, we call the Museum of Art of Rio. And but at the same time, it's quite complex when you think about the gentrification situation over there. But what probably we could say what means gentrification here is very different from what means over there.
So
the strategies.
What are the core differences?
More aggressive over there, probably. More slowly also. So here we can, destroy a building and make a new one in months. Over there is a huge and long process, lots of corruption involved. But once there is a museum, and as an employee of culture, what do? And I really believed in the workers over there and how we are trying to face also this contradiction, but this is basically a good example of how Brazil is very contradictions. It's a lot of perspective, and what we can do as a educator inside the museum, knowing about the whole context, was a challenge for me as a supervisor with a bunch of educators to also teach them, because the scene was very weak when we arrived. Just a few groups was very into this. Was not like São Paulo. Was more like a developed scene of education in museums, and was very important. Lots of contradiction, but also I could meet a lot of people in Rio, not just in the rich parts, the noble part, but also in around the whole city. It's a big city, and this was very important for my research as an artist also, because I could meet people that if I was just moving to Rio, living in a cool place near the beach, I couldn't. And this told me a lot about my childhood also, because it was basically the same context,
You couldn't because it was inaccessible financially and things like this, or how do you mean you couldn't live there?
Sorry, I don't think you mean I couldn't, because usually there is this kind of, people when move to Rio and they are not from there, usually they look for the beautiful beach, so I would like to, so this is where the money is in terms of investments and a lot of things. But the difference from São Paulo is you have also poor regions in the middle of the rich regions. In São Paulo, they were more efficient to put poor people in the margins of the city, And Rio, I mean, how the city developed, they didn't consider, for example, the hills and the mountains, and poor people start to occupy this. So that's why we call like favelas just happened, you know, like poor people climbing hills to live there. It was like a not good place to live for the rich part of the society. But then, so that's basically the relief situation in Rio. That's why you can see poverty and richness very close to each other over there. And this is quite interesting also, because you can see the conflict, the social conflict in front of you sometimes, you know, in very specific situations. I'm being too prolific. No?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So it was complicated,
Yeah.
contradiction, but I still believe in how culture employees try to develop a better work over there, trying to, you know,
So it was a
contribute.
positive experience.
Was.
Yes.
It was a hard work,
Yeah.
but was important.
And how long ago was that? That was
It was 2012.
2012.
They
okay.
inaugurated the museum in 2013.
Mhm.
And I worked in the museum until 2015 beginning, because I changed position over there, but until the end of 2016 probably.
And then you moved
3
back
years.
to.
No, I realized I was too old, and I need to develop better my work as an artist, so
Okay.
I focused on more in my artwork than in the education program. Because when I finished that, I was like 10 years working with education in institutions in Brazil, you know.
So that's around the time you decided to fully focus
Yeah,
your attention on
yeah,
developing your art
Yeah.
practice.
yeah.
And then amongst all of that situation, the topic that we began with started to happen.
Yeah, in 2018.
During that when you were just starting to focus on art
Yeah.
and do these investigations.
Yeah. Rodrigo, the point was, I always had to work in a social environment, but Rodrigo was killed in 2016. I was in South Korea doing a residence, and he was killed with 12 shots.
And for those people that don't know who that is, could you explain who that person is?
Was a very close friend to me,
Okay.
but life split us because
Okay.
he was like working as a big drug dealer.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a huge cartel in Brazil.
Wow.
And they torture him, lot of things that, you know, in a common situation.
This is the law. This is the police side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
you're right. Okay. Because I see.
Yeah. And then I have to talk about this. I cannot hold this anymore, and I have to put this in some place because I cannot, because I get sick, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cancer or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like too angry. Like when he got killed, her mom called me, hey, what I do? He was the third son of her killed by police,
No.
and that's complicated, you know. Like what do you talk for this man? So I tell her, hey, Maria, I don't know. I mean, if it's too hard, I think God will forgive you. Because she was telling me, hey, I cannot live anymore. You know. So it's this kind of situation we are facing that. And the point for me is you have to go deep, because also police in Brazil are being killed a lot. And usually police is from the same regions, like poor regions. I mean, police is not like these, you know, rich guys. It's not like that.
Well, this is a kind of
So
to
it's-
extend on what you were saying before. It's like that lack of trust,
Yeah,
security.
yeah.
On this side, I'm
I really would like to trust in a police officer.
Yeah.
I really would like.
Yeah.
I
It'll be
hope I
interesting-
can.
It'll be
you know,
interesting to see what your experience is. I don't know if you've had too many experiences with the police here in Berlin, but
not much.
it'll be interesting to see. I don't know how long you intend to stay here for, but it'll be interesting maybe to keep talking about that, because my experience has been very positive here, and there is a level of trust. It seems to be, and I've spoken to other people that have come from various backgrounds, and there seems to be something more towards what you were saying before, this level of communication and understanding that we come from different places.
Yeah.
But I guess like listening to your story and how you've used art to explore these really painful experiences. Perhaps that makes the title of your current work, Allegory of Terror, a little bit more understandable in a sense.
This is a series I'm developing. As basically, I could say it's basically bulletproof sculptures.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So what I doing is trying to understand also how these images, for example, let's take this as an example. So there is this animals.
No, we can come closer.
Yeah, I can show.
Yeah, we'll go close.
Maybe. So this is a collage.
So you intend to make this large scale?
Yeah, like this was another test. Sorry guys.
Yeah, bring it.
This is one of the first tests. And right now I am applying this image over bulletproof fabric. So this is a kind of, I don't know.
And this is going to be the scale, or is it going to be even larger than this potentially?
It will be large.
Wow.
Yeah. The animals will be much like, I cannot say real scale, because I mean this is an anaconda probably right now.
Actually, there are probably snakes that big.
It's a python, but it's small, and but the idea, I don't like this kind of photograph, these foam boards. Talk a lot about other contests, and I was thinking how. But basically, what I did is I was trying to understand this allegory aspect of also violence and security in Brazil. And a good example of this is, have you heard about Copacabana Beach?
Copacabana.
Can you repeat?
Copacabana?
Copacabana.
Yeah.
can't say. It's a very famous beach in Brazil.
Copacabana.
A lot of songs.
Yeah, I know. I think
Bossa Nova and everything. And sometimes, I mean, more than 6 times since the 90s, the army was on the streets with tanks. In front of the beach.
In this beach,
exactly. This is the atmosphere of Copacabana, exactly.
Yeah.
And there is no chance the soldier pull the trigger of the tank, because there is no reason for that. There is no enemy for that. No. And this is allegoric. This is like the cars in Carnival Parade. So that's the comparison. The surface, the small comparison. This is, but we are expending 3 million euros in a tank instead of education or culture and why to show the size of the jeep. Like who is the powerful? It's quite allegoric.
Like it's using this fair thing as a statement, as a platform to say something quite implicitly.
And we are not even powerful like USA or maybe German or China. We're not.
But 3 million.
There is a statistic. If we begin a war, we have like 3 minutes munition.
I mean, I think it's number 1 America, and then the number 2 is like 3 and 4 is somewhere.
We are far from that.
How does this? So it's just
related.
How is this related? To that?
I start to understand that the emblems of police, because we have different police in Brazil, all then carrying these animal images. And then interesting is usually police is connected with this idea of nationalism or patriotism, like using national symbols of that. And our federal police has a bald eagle in the emblem. And this animal is not from Brazil. It's not even from Brazil. It's from North America. And when you put in this, in a sense, like considering the practice, the barbary
That's so bizarre.
of polis, when we consider, for example, indigenous people in Brazil, the animals, the figure of animals, or some performatic actions or rituals, belongs to this cosmology as an animal power. This talk about identity and a lot of things. And when you consider this allegoric aspect and how they use animals to show this idea of power or something, to me, I like to think, to be honest, this is a kind of gap from the humanity of the structure of polis. Like this is not like to show power, but to show terror and barbarism, And what I start to collect it, to check all these animals, so I took some images from the internet and start this kind of impossible genetic species showing these animals, like this tiger, snake, something.
It's frightening.
And these also, so all these animals. I mean, the image from any photograph in the internet.
At a glance, that could be a really sick. A really sick.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And we have all these animals in. I have those. Oh, I like those. This is very scary for me. Can you imagine this bird?
It's pretty full on.
I like those. I'm scared about them, and I'm scared also this structure that also keep police officers in a very fragile situation. And I think this is also emblematic. This is also an allegory, and I really like this flat aspect because it's kind of empty it's not meaningful, it's like it's like how they also are being represented by these animals.
Yeah, it's a facade. It's a shell.
Kind of, exactly.
Without the soul, without the actual being, without the consent or something of the animal or the spirit or somehow. There's no depth or story behind it. It's purely being used for its potential power as an image.
So that is basically what I'm showing. The main piece in this next solo show will be these frames here. So instead of I'm setting up or making this collage defining the animal, will be just part of them in these frames, like in 3x. And you can, once you go around the frames, you can create your own composition of parts of animals. Will be a little different, but all of them, I mean, the image print over bulletproof fabric.
I really like that
The
material, it's beautiful. And I also like the fact that when you do go around and you see the back and you see that it's just an image and a facade. There's also
I love this aspect of illusion of three-dimensional with bidimensional, and I think this tells me a lot about this, and putting these in that context maybe help me also to realize what's going on in terms of barbarism and security in Brazil. Another aspect of I really like, and I'm trying to initiate this process with this exhibition, and bring more pop figures. For example,
pop figurines?
Pop
figures.
Yeah, like Batman. So Gotham City is still the same after 8 years. So Batman was creating 39 and Gotham City is still the same. So the billionaire here couldn't fix the city as a vigilant, using his bestiality and money just to hit poor people. So we accept the idea.
Wow, that's a very specific review of Batman.
So
Jesus.
we accept the idea as a billionaire here. It became a evil or this terror image, as he said in the comic books, in the some of the balloons that I will show in the exhibition. Like he said, criminals are suspicious and coward, kind. I need to find a figure to put into their heart terror and blah blah blah, and I became
into that terror into the heart.
So it's we accept that a billionaire here became a vigilant because he suffered a trauma in the childhood. Yeah, but we know. I mean, after a while, Joker appeared. Okay, but at the beginning, we don't consider why a thief in the comic book has a path of so.
Where's his trauma?
Anybody born as a butterfly, there is a path to become something. So so why you still? I mean, in terms of Latin America and Brazil, why still with this dichotomy between the good guy and the bad guy when the situation is much more complex than that? And to be honest, who is being killed in Latin America or in US right now? Yeah, and these are my friends, you know, and I'm pretty sure I'm alive. I mean, I was talking with my wife 2 days ago. Hey, baby, you realize how even our threats are a kind of privilege? Because that people didn't threat my friends. They just went there and bang. And we received threats.
They received no notification.
Yeah,
it just happened.
Exactly. You know, so even being threatened in Brazil as an artist, because right now artists are being considered enemies of population, of people, by the new current government. Even this is a privilege. So it's a quite complex situation. You know?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you're now here and going through that process still and unpacking that. I mean, I was going to ask how, you know, Berlin might affect this work, but I think there's so much momentum behind it. It's more about telling your story here for people to perhaps learn about what's happening over there. And maybe if you stay here over time, perhaps there'll be parts of your experience in Berlin that might feed into that. But I think for the time being, it's about presenting your experience through your art here, and so the current stage is there's no site in which you may return back. This is your home for the next little while.
I had a show in February in New York after more than 1 year without doing nothing, because in that situation I had to move, no studio, no working, you know, quite crazy. And when I arrived, was like this feeling of, okay, I'm safe, and my wife. And then we realized like immigrant life is not easy.
In America or here?
Here,
okay.
The language, as I told you, Berlin wasn't a plan.
No.
And the language to my wife is a very problematic situation, because for us in the art scene, English is okay. But for her, as a worker, in her area,
it's
always ask, hey, we need, you know, German.
That's a really good point.
And then you get like this, all the depressive situations, like, and this is complicated. But we are trying to deal with that.
Yeah, and you've just arrived, you know, and I think, you know, no matter what your background is, when you come to a new big city, there's a time in the process. How long have you been here for now? It's been
1 year.
1 year now. Yeah, I mean, for a big city, you know, I've lived in a few now, and it feels like it, especially with Berlin, it took a few years actually to find my rhythm, and I had to go through a few phases. And I've seen that reflected in other people as well. And I think you're in a good spot. You're in an incredible space right now. You've got some good shows coming up. You know, I think that we could do something together in the future if that makes sense. And thanks so much for talking to us today and explaining your story. And I'm really excited to see these. You'll have to share the date and the place with us.
We'll be here.
He'll be here.
Netanya.
Easy.
I think they open on 19 June.
It's in our calendar, right?
Great.
Yeah.
So 19th of June, is it?
Yeah.
19th of June.
But I'm not sure if will be opening or not.
We can
There'll
come
be
to
an
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the new openings are called. They're called opening or
I will check.
Yeah,
then.
now you
I know it's like they had to book or something like that.
No,
I don't know
with
exactly.
mask and Abstand you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think we have a small thing.
Should we go around and you show us the pieces a bit, no?
I think we could do.
Yeah, come on,
Yeah.
we're here.
Okay.
Show us around, Igor.
Well, I introduced these frames
Yeah.
for you. This will be like axes and the parts of animals. Like, let me take this here. Like, imagine these in a very big scale. So these fish eyes, like here, and a bull body here, and a wing there. But these will be like, you know. I'm showing also these umbrellas. This umbrella here. I told you about the bat. It's very common in Brazil. Yeah, of course. It's just an umbrella.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know if it spent months. Spend months putting it in position.
I have another work. It's a kind of narrative. I put some objects together, and these objects is like was confused by police. So citizens were holding these objects, and police thought would be gangs, and people were killed. And very ordinary objects like screwdrivers, umbrella, and like toy guns or these kind of, you know. And this will be on show together with the balloon. So this is most complicated for me to handle it. So this is bed sheets.
Pardon?
Bed sheet.
Bad shit.
Bed, yeah. The sheets on the bed, yeah.
I heard bad shit.
Oh, sorry.
I heard bad shit.
Could be.
And I was like, really? Bad shit?
My accent's terrible.
No, that's my ears. I heard bad shit. All good.
And this was used for some people from my community and other communities, friends, to cover bodies on the streets, was killed by police.
Oof.
So basically these are
So there is actually blood stain.
dry blood.
Oh my god.
And this is a technique used for prisoners to escape from jail. So this is a rope, so they twist the bed sheet. This is the first test. And then I use lead wire to do that, but usually they use other things. And this is based on a myth from the 14th century, a Catholic myth from about Santa Teresa, Saint Therese, and Saint John of the Cross. And he got visions. He was protesting in the church, blah blah blah. He got this vision from her teaching how to escape from the prison in Spain. And I think with the colonization, this myth just went to Latin America, and the prisoners call kindly this rope of Teresa. Yeah.
Wow.
And
Oh, so many layers to it.
and this was the piece I showed it in New York in February, but after my gallery announced that exhibition after a while, the threats just started again. And two people from militia went to my old address to check if I was there or not, blah blah blah. Like threatening the doorman was so.
Wow.
That's why I cannot go back to Brazil right now. And with this current president talking about how Nazis are very nice. So yeah.
Crazy time.
But this is a little bit different. I'm using also adamant here just to checking, so probably I will mix that, this fiber with this, because I really like this semantical sense of how this is being called fabric and also this. So for me there's a huge gap, but they belong to the same context, you know, and that's when you ask me, what about being in Europe or in Germany and bring this result of this whole trade network it's very important to show this here, you know, or in US, for example, because basically the whole guns and things came from Europe and US.
Wow, it's crazy to think then that, you know, not planning that and then actually arriving here, and having that connection with your project. It's quite an interesting coincidence.
Yeah, I didn't realize about heckling call because I had other words talking about other companies in Europe, like Glock in Austria, I think Herstal in Belgium, and Sig Sauer in Switzerland, and they're very famous between drug dealers and police. So that's my point when I put them together. Like the companies are selling in both sides, you know, and illegal and a legal way. And was a coincidence when I started to research more about heckling call and found a lot of coincidences. Like I knew Marielle, and she was killed by that guy. First time I heard about the music is the most representative rap group that was influenced me a lot as a person. I mean, they saved a whole generation from sadness.
What's the name?
Rationalized MCs.
Rationalized,
like rational MCs.
Rational MCs.
Yeah,
we should. We're always looking for things to listen to. Maybe it might be a good chance to learn.
If you translate, probably it will be nice.
Is it this one that with the 13,000 words? No, it's not this one. This is very contemporary, you know, this one.
No, but both are very contemporary. No, I showed him the rap with more like until president.
Okay.
Spanish.
Let's so let's
1,300 words.
Yeah. So let's wrap up. Let's wrap up this. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure up here.
And we'll
Oh, we didn't bring this.
we'll touch and we'll wash our hands afterwards. And
I forgot.
yes, thank you all who listened. Can we turn that round? Yeah, we can do that. I don't think. Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll speak soon.